Hi everyone, and welcome to Biology Professor. Today we're going to do a demo to determine the percent water in a few different kinds of fruit and vegetable, specifically lettuce and red grapes. These are the things that you need for a demo like this. You need an oven and a cookie sheet. You need some aluminum foil. You need a scale. You need whatever fruit or vegetable you're going to be using. You also need a notebook and a pencil to write down the masses that you weigh, and you'll also need a calculator. Here's how it works. First of all, we're going to use aluminum foil to hold the different fruits and vegetables because when we dry them in the oven, they will stick to whatever surface they're on, so the aluminum foil keeps things from being too messy. You'll see here that our aluminum foil pans are not heavy enough for their masses to register on our scale. So for this experiment, we're actually going to just disregard the masses of the aluminum foil pans since they are so minuscule compared to the actual fruit and vegetable. So we'll start like this by measuring our lettuce. I have shredded some iceberg lettuce. The balance is tared, and we see that the lettuce weighs 40 grams. Now we're going to figure out the mass of the grapes. The grapes I have cut into halves. This helps increase their surface area to volume ratio so that they'll dry a little faster. So here, I'm going to put them in the aluminum foil pan with this side, with the fleshy side up, which will also help them dry faster. Let's see, to get the best weight, we need to re-tare after I fill the aluminum foil with all the grapes. So now the balance is tared. We'll get the mass of our grapes, 45 grams. Now it's time to take our lettuce and our grapes. We're going to dry them in the oven. This will cause the water that's inside the cells to evaporate, and then once we have dried lettuce and dried grapes, we will get the masses again. We will then be able to determine the mass of the water that was lost by getting the difference of the mass we just took and the mass of the dried lettuce and grapes. This will allow us to calculate the percent water of lettuce and the percent water of grapes, and we will then be able to compare the values that we determine from this experiment with reference values in published sources. Now it's time to put the food into the oven. You should use an oven that is not already preheated. This is because if you put the food into an oven that's already preheated, there is more likely to be splattering, which can change your results. So to decrease splattering, put the food into an oven that is cool. That way, the slow heating up will prevent splattering from occurring. So now it's in the oven. I'm going to set it to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. 170 degrees Fahrenheit is about 77 degrees Celsius. We will let it bake for about an hour. Remember, this is when the water will evaporate, and eventually we will have just the dried food in those little aluminum foil pans. We will weigh those, subtract that mass from the mass when the food was still wet, and the difference there will be the mass of water lost. Then we can determine the mass of the food that was water, so the percent of the mass of the food that was water. Remember that we cut the grapes into halves and left them face up with the fleshy side up. By increasing the surface area, we can increase the drying time. If you're interested in learning more about the surface area to volume ratio, see my video on that subject. Now let's look at our results. After leaving the lettuce and the grapes in the oven at that lower temperature for about an hour to allow a partial dehydration, I then raised the temperature of the oven to about 300 Fahrenheit just to allow the dehydration to happen more quickly. Now let's look at the numbers. For lettuce, before dehydration, so when the lettuce still had all of its water content, we measured it at 40 grams. After, it was at 2 grams. This means that the water content of the original lettuce was 38 grams. We can now figure out what percentage of the original lettuce mass was due to water. That is 38 divided by 40, which is equal to about 95%. For the grapes, we found different results. They were originally 45 grams. After dehydration, they were 9 grams. This means that the water content of the original grape sample was 36 grams. That means that the percent water of the original grapes was 36 divided by 45, which is about 80% water. So we see here that the grapes were about 80% water, the lettuce about 95% water. So with this experiment, we can see the water content of the various foods that we eat. It's easy enough to do at home, so I encourage you to try it. You can always Google the percent water value for whatever food you are working with and see how close you got. For example, I found reference values online for grapes that agreed with 80%, and reference values online for lettuce that said about 95 or 96%, showing that we got pretty close. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching, and we'll see you next time on Biology Professor.